I've always been fascinated by old, forgotten radio frequencies. There's something hauntingly beautiful about catching whispers from the past in the static. That's why, when I inherited an antique radio set from my grandfather, I set it up immediately in the study of my quiet, rural home. It was late one evening, after a long day of monotonous office work, that I decided to unwind by tuning into the forgotten bands of the radio spectrum. The house was silent, save for the occasional creak and groan that old houses make as they settle for the night. I sat in the dim light of my desk lamp, slowly turning the dial, letting the static fill the room with its unpredictable symphony. As I passed through the familiar hisses and crackles, a clear, though somewhat distant, music station came into earshot. It played jazz, a smooth, melancholic tune that sounded like it was from another era. I was about to settle into the nostalgia when the music abruptly stopped. A moment of heavy silence hung in the air before a voice broke through, clear and startlingly close, as if someone was sitting right across from me. "Good evening, dear listener," the voice said, deep and unnervingly calm. "You've tuned into a special frequency tonight. Stay a while, won't you?" I leaned in, intrigued and a bit unsettled. "Who is this?" I asked, not really expecting a reply. "Oh, I'm just a wanderer of the airwaves," the voice continued, as if he had heard me. "But tonight, I have a story just for you." I chuckled nervously, looking around the dimly lit room. "All right, I'm listening," I said, half to myself, half to the voice, my hands clasped around a mug of cooling coffee. "It begins on a night much like tonight," the voice narrated. "A lonely soul finds a mysterious frequency. A voice through the static offers a tale. The listener becomes part of the story, a story that hasn't ended yet." The air in the room felt colder, heavier. I shivered, pulling my sweater tighter around me. "The tale is simple, yet tragic," the voice continued. "A young man found an old radio, not unlike yourself. He heard a broadcast, a cry for help disguised as a story. The voice told of a hidden place where lost things go, where lost people go. Curiosity led him to seek this place, driven by a desire to solve the mystery." I swallowed hard, my mouth dry. This wasn't just a broadcast. It felt like a warning, or worse, an invitation. "The place is real," the voice hissed softly. "It's close to where you live. A house abandoned, swallowed by time and nature. It's where the signal is strongest, where the story turns to truth." "Why are you telling me this?" I managed to ask, my voice a mere whisper. "Because every story needs a listener, and every mystery needs a solver. Will you be the one? Or will you turn away, let the frequency fade into static once more?" I sat frozen, my heart racing. This couldn't be real. It was just a prank. It had to be. But curiosity, that dangerous lure, got the better of me. I found myself grabbing a flashlight, my keys. Next thing I knew, I was in my car, driving down the foggy, moonlit roads. I knew the place the voice described. It was infamous in local lore. An old house on the edge of town, abandoned for decades, rumored to be cursed. As I approached, the static on my car's radio grew louder, more insistent. I parked at the end of the driveway, the house looming like a spectre in the darkness. "Enter," the voice beckoned, now coming from the car's speakers. I hesitated, fear rooting me to the spot. Taking a deep breath, I stepped out of the car, my flashlight cutting through the night. The front door of the house was ajar, as if waiting for me. Inside, the air was stale, thick with dust and decay. I walked through the empty rooms, the beam of my flashlight revealing peeling wallpaper, discarded furniture, a layer of neglect. Then my flashlight flickered and died. Panic seized me. I fumbled in the dark, trying to turn it back on, when suddenly the radio I had left in the car blared to life, its volume echoing through the empty house. "Welcome," the voice said, now everywhere and nowhere. "You found the place, now find the truth." My heart thudded in my chest as I stumbled back to the car, the voice laughing through the static. I drove away, not daring to look back, the house disappearing into the night. I never touched the radio again. I locked it away, hoping to forget. But sometimes, late at night, I swear I can hear faint music and a voice calling out to me, inviting me back to finish the story I had started. And sometimes I wonder if I should.
Every time I take the night shift for the long haul between cities, I try to find something to keep me company over the lonely miles. That night, as I navigated the winding roads through the dense woods of northern Maine, my usual station crackled and went silent. Flipping through the static, searching for anything to break the silence, I stumbled upon a faint broadcast, voices discussing something that sounded eerily out of place. "Not meant to cross, yet they keep trying," a voice said, before a wave of static washed it away. Intrigued, I focused on the dial, tweaking it minutely to recapture that particular frequency. The effort was rewarded with a clearer voice, though the source remained a mystery. "Listen to the signs, heed the warnings," it continued, as if part of a conversation or an interview. Who were they? And what were they talking about? It felt like I was eavesdropping on a private discussion meant for others, perhaps otherworldly others. The miles stretched on, the only illumination coming from my headlights and the faint glow of the dashboard. As I listened, the voices delved deeper into bizarre topics, whispers of hidden paths between worlds, secret corridors accessed through rituals, or by those with certain gifts. The discussion seemed half-cocked, the stuff of pulp fiction and late-night conspiracy theories. Yet, the more I listened, the more I felt drawn in, as if the voices were speaking directly to me. "You must turn back when you see the signs," one voice cautioned, serious and somber. The signal strengthened, the voices growing clearer as I drove deeper into the forest. My eyes searched the darkness for anything unusual, the stories igniting a primal alertness in me. Then I saw it. A road sign, not uncommon, but its message chilled me. "Beware the crossing." The same phrase the voice had just uttered. A coincidence? Or had I driven into a broadcast meant as a warning for this very place? Curiosity overruled reason. I slowed down, my headlights catching another sign, this one more ominous. "Do not stop. Do not look into the woods." My heart raced. The radio crackled, the voices now almost pleading. "Do not listen to the voices that beckon. They are not of your world." It was then I heard it, a soft melodic calling coming from the forest, a voice so sweet and inviting, it promised wonders and hidden delights. I was almost lured by its charm, my hand pausing on the door handle, but the radio burst to life again. Static screaming into the night. "Drive now!" the voice commanded, a note of terror underlying its urgency. I slammed my foot on the gas, the car lurching forward as I tore away from the spot. Looking back in my rearview mirror, I saw figures at the edge of the woods, barely visible, like shadows given form, watching. The radio fell silent as I put distance between myself and that place. The rest of my drive was a blur of adrenaline and fear, my mind replaying the night's eerie events. When I finally stopped at a rest area, the sun was beginning to rise, the night's terrors receding with the darkness. I've driven that route many times since, but never again at night. And the radio? I leave it off now, preferring the silence. Because sometimes, when it's quiet, I can still hear a faint calling, like an echo of that night, a reminder of the narrow escape from a world not meant for mine. And I wonder, had I opened that door, would I still be here? Or would I have stepped into a story with no end?
The old truck's engine hummed as I drove down the coastal highway, the vast ocean stretching out endlessly to my right. The dashboard clock read just past midnight, the only other light coming from the soft glow of the radio dial. I'd taken this route countless times, the familiarity a comfort against the backdrop of an increasingly sleepless night. But tonight, I was restless, uneasy, as if the sea itself whispered warnings carried by the salty breezy. I had always found solace in late-night radio during these long drives, the voices and music from distant cities bridging the solitude of the road. That night, however, as I scanned through the stations, hoping for a familiar tune or a cheerful disc jockey, I stumbled across a broadcast that caught me off guard. It wasn't music, but a soft, almost imperceptible static that grew clearer as I tuned in. Voices emerged, layered and overlapping, as if a crowd were speaking from far away. "Remember us," one voice sighed, the words floating through the crackle of static. "Hear our stories," another whispered, trailing off into a sigh. Curiosity piqued, I leaned forward, straining to decipher the fragmented sentences. The voices weren't part of any regular radio program. They sounded distant, desperate, and eerily calm. I adjusted the dial, fine-tuning the frequency as the static morphed into clearer voices, each sharing snippets of stories, tales of ships lost to the sea, of sailors long forgotten, of loves left waiting on distant shores. Driven by a newfound obsession, I pulled over to the side of the highway, the ocean's dark waves crashing beneath the cliffs. The radio's chatter became a chorus of the lost, each voice eager to share its sorrow, its joy, its tragedy. We linger in the frequencies caught between waves. A deep voice boomed, stronger than the others. "Why do you linger?" I found myself asking, not expecting a response. "To be remembered," a soft, melodic voice answered. My skin prickled with goosebumps. The conversation was impossible, yet here it was, happening through the static of an old truck radio. "Who are you?" I pressed, my voice barely a whisper against the sound of the sea. "We are those forgotten by time, lost to the depths, our stories untold until tonight," the chorus replied. "Share our tales, carry our memories beyond these waves." Compelled by their plea, I listened. A captain spoke of his ship, swallowed by a storm in 1821, his crew lost to the whims of a merciless ocean. A woman recounted waiting on the shore, her heart breaking slowly with each passing day her lover did not return. A young sailor shared his dreams of the land he never reached. Each story was a thread in the tapestry of human endeavor and suffering, woven into the frequencies of a radio band forgotten by all but those who had no other way to speak. I sat, enraptured, until the sky began to lighten with the first hints of dawn. As the sun's rays touched the horizon, the voices began to fade, their final words a plea to remember, to tell their stories, to keep their memories alive. I drove away as the last voice silenced, a solemn promise etched into my heart. I would tell their stories, share their histories, ensure their existence was more than just a whisper on the wind. Days turned into weeks, and I found myself drawn back to that stretch of road, that frequency. Sometimes, when the conditions were just right, the voices would return, each time different, each time eager to share. I started recording them, compiling their tales into a collection of the forgotten. And so, my late-night drives became a mission, a purpose. I was no longer just a truck driver, but a keeper of forgotten stories, a bridge between the lost and the living. Through me, they would live on, their voices no longer confined to the static between worlds, but heard by all who dared to listen.